many people here today. So first, I just want to say thank you. President Hughes is really sorry that she can't be here today. She's actually out of state with a meeting with a lot of other community college presidents. But we are videotaping this discussion. So she and anyone else who's missed this event who wants to listen in can. And I want to assure you that President Hughes wants this to be the beginning of many discussions about safety and security on our campus. And she's looking forward to hearing you. So this is actually directly what she wanted me to say. I have to put on my glasses to do so. In the days since the assault was reported last Thursday, I have heard the concerns of members of our community and worked with college staff and police to plan a response. We have increased the police presence at this college. We are working with area police departments, and we are reviewing our security policies at each of our campuses. The safety and security of our community is of critical importance and necessary to foster an environment where teaching and learning can occur. You will hear today about steps that individuals may take in order to keep themselves safer. And while this information is important, I want to be sure that you know that I am fully committed to doing everything we can as an institution to foster an environment of safety and security at our college. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here, and I want to acknowledge the people who will be presenting today. We have Captain Shauna Collins from our college police department. We have Alfonso Atkins, our Director of Institutional Equity and our Title IX Coordinator. And we have Lauren Roy from Day One, the Sexual Assault Resource Center. And after some brief remarks by each of those folks, we're going to open this up to question and answers. Our goal, after sharing some information from you, is really to get your feedback and think about together how we think about next steps as our community. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for attending. On behalf of Chief Weatherall and the President, we appreciate your time on this important topic and your attendance here today. So as Elise stated, we're going to have a brief presentation. I'd like to start out by talking what I can about the recent reported attack in the parking lot here. The Providence Police Department is the lead agency on this sexual assault investigation. So working in conjunction with them, any information to come out about the report would come from Providence. There is no new information regarding a suspect, a vehicle, or anything else that I can share with you. There's just no information. We can tell you that the attack took place in the front parking lot around midday. So our immediate response to that attack was to make sure that the victim was in touch with the proper authorities and the resources necessary for her to cope with this situation. Our second priority, besides the safety of the victim, was to put out an alert to alert the community, and I'm sure that you all have that. If you did not receive the alert, we're going to address that as well. So the obligation to issue a timely warning from the Clery Act was issued, providing as much information that we could to promote awareness of the event and to allow the community to safeguard themselves. So I'd like to share with you some things we're doing, that we have been doing, that we're currently doing, and that are planned for the future. One thing I want to point out is that nowadays no police agency exists in a vacuum, so your campus police is supported by the local police and the state police, and we have an immense amount of resources at our disposal, right? So we don't exist in a vacuum. What we don't have or can't do, other agencies can assist us. We have memorandums of understanding with those agencies, and we work closely with them. As you can see, we have, and the President has emphasized this, we all believe this in the police department and the leadership of the college, a commitment to you, students, faculty, staff, and visitors to the campus to provide as safe an environment as we possibly can. Obviously, many of you are aware of the emphasis on sexual assaults on campus, and it's reached the level of the U.S. Congress, who has reauthorized the Violence Against Women or VOWER Act and the SAVE Act, and that requires us to provide resources, response criteria, investigation criteria, and many other things, some of which our Title IX representative, Alfonso Atkins, will be addressing. But there are many ongoing programs already that are available to the campus community to address the issues of dating violence, domestic violence, stalking, and sexual assault. I mentioned previously we sent out that alert of the college contracts with RAVE. It's a state-of-the-art notification system. I used it in a previous campus law enforcement career. It allows us to be in contact with the entire community 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The college had already begun installing card readers and security cameras on campuses. You can see Lincoln and Providence, the installation has been completed, although there's still always ongoing evaluations of the need for more or better placement. Warwick is the next campus to be outfitted, but has already been in progress, and that will be coming to the campus in the upcoming months. There's meetings ongoing, and bids have gone out to address the Warwick campus. So this rollout of security enhancements and improvements has been ongoing for a couple of years now, and it will continue. Many of you are no doubt aware of the college escort policy, where you can, if you feel uneasy for any reason, if you're here late, for whatever reason, if you call us, we'll escort you to your vehicle. I already mentioned the collaboration with area agencies. It goes beyond law enforcement. It includes our partners at Day One. Law enforcement has been working with Day One goes back to my career in Warwick a million years ago. Some of you people weren't even born. It goes back to, for decades, we've been working closely with domestic violence advocates and sexual assault responders. We also have had in the past some trainings with our local partners. We're going to increase those in the future to enhance our readiness here on the 4 campuses. I mentioned previously that we have written MOUs. A lot of college campuses don't have those. We have them in the future. I mentioned VOWER previously. Was just reauthorized. In the last couple of years, there's been a lot of changes on campuses because of VOWER and the requirements, the things that have to mesh between Title IX and the Clery Act. There's an intersection now that was not really there before. So institutions of higher learning have to have prevention programs, ongoing awareness programs, things such as bystander intervention programs, and it can be as much and as varied as we can think of. Whatever, there's a challenge right now on campuses for communities out there to try different approaches, and over the upcoming years, see what works best, do some actual scientific study of what works best, and to share that amongst the institutes of higher learning. So this is all stuff in progress. It's from the Department of Education. The White House has been involved. So we're in tune to all these changes. We're keeping up with them, and I'm sure the college will try and develop and implement the best programs that are out there. Historically, we've enjoyed very low crime on the 4 campuses. Some of you, I'm sure, are aware that of the Clery Act, we have to publish and be transparent about the crime statistics. I'm new here to CCRI. In my first couple of months here, I've gone through the last 4 years worth of crime data and statistics, and I can tell you that I'm pleased to report that historically, crime, especially violent crime, is very low on all 4 campuses. So these are right from the newest Clery report that was just published October 1st. This is the listing campus. A lot of zeros and ones. And I believe me, I know that even if you just see a 1, it represents a victim. I get that, but we are very lucky that our campuses are historically very low in crime, particularly violent crime. It's a brief look forward. Lincoln campus, again, more of the same. Again, you see 2 of sexual assault nature. That's 2 that shouldn't have happened, but Newport. Those statistics, as I stated, are in the Clery report. They can be found at that address. If you go to the CCRI homepage and you just plug in Clery report, then you can pull up the 2015 is what you're looking for. The 2015, the Clery report has to have by statute the previous 3 years, right? Obviously it's 2016, we can't report on 16 until 17, but so when you pull up the 2000, I've been asked before, why don't we see the 2016 report? It's because we're still in 16. So October 1 of every year, you publish the 2000 of the previous 3 years. So this year is 2015. At the end of that report, which has all the procedures that we have to follow, the programs that we have, the college's response to sexual assault, at the end of that, you'll see the statistics. And it's for the past 3 years. I will give you one warning that IT is still updating the information, so here and there you may hit upon older material, but it will be completely, the report is there, it's there in its entirety. The navigation is a little off as of yet, we're still working on that. At this time, we are going to, I forgot to mention, we are going to, after the brief presentation, open it up to questions and answers. I know some of you have questions. But first I'd like to introduce our Institutional Equity and Title IX Coordinator, Alfonso Atkins, who will discuss Title IX.
Hello. Thanks for being here. The real issue I think we want to address when you have situations like this that many colleges have to deal with, sexual assault, sexual violence, is making sure that you all understand the options and the resources that you have available to you. And I just wanted to say a little bit, about what we do in institutional equity, and if I could just there we go. All right. This is probably the most important part, really, for me as a Title IX coordinator, for every member of our campus community. First off, understand that Title IX, okay, as part of the 1972 Education Amendments, this is something that really promotes gender equity across campuses and by incorporation applies to sexual violence, sexual harassment, gender-based discrimination. That's a lot of words, really, to simply say within this particular first paragraph, if you are affected by or a witness to sexual violence or gender-based harassment, my office, this Office of Institutional Equity and Title IX Task Force, offers a few things that you should be aware of. As a student here at CCRI, it's important that you know Title IX really does not function specifically as a law enforcement agency per se. I do not conduct criminal investigations per se. Instead, when I get a report specifically from one of our campus community members about being witness to or affected by these particular issues, my job is to make sure first that that person has some support. Support and resources that are made available to them either on campus or off that I can hopefully match them with. It's really important that you all know that. And later on, I'll give you specifically an email address that I really hope you either throw in your phones or just put, I think, in your memory, because I want you to remember this is your first step, I think, if you don't come by way of law enforcement, to really reporting any issue such as this. But I'll move on. Investigation procedures and follow-up does not speak to a criminal investigation, but a Title IX investigation, which is actually given some criteria informed by the Office of Civil Rights in particular. And then, of course, the prevention education opportunities. Those are not only, I think, offered through our efforts with college police, but also specifically in the hopes as we grow, the Institutional Equity Office will be responsible for developing prevention education as one of its primary focuses as well. If you look at our current website, the URL is listed here. I'll have you know, really in the wake of this and in the wake of a few really just confusions with what that means, soon you'll actually see that URL change, and it'll be pretty easy. It'll actually be ccri.edu/equity. So undoubtedly, if you remember nothing else, hopefully you will remember that equity really is a place that you can always report an issue of gender-based harassment, sexual violence, sexual discrimination. I want you to remember that. As I say, supporting you is our first priority, and we do have a Title IX task force. It's wonderful. Members of this community who have been here longer than I actually certainly tackled these issues before I got here, but now I'm here and I'm serving as a coordinator. So that being said, the Title IX task force is another group of fantastic professionals that you should get to know. They include faculty members, other staff members, folks who have been trained and in some cases certified by a couple of different organizations, most notably at TICSA, to conduct Title IX investigations, but more importantly to you, to be able to offer support in the moment of reporting, either being personally victim of or witness to these types of issues. All of them are listed on that website, on the Institutional Equity website, and I would encourage you to get to know each and every one of them if you can, hopefully before you have to report something to them. I say specifically pointing you towards available mental and physical health resources at CCRI and in the community. We have some services and some professionals on campus who make themselves available, and those are the folks on the Title IX Task Force who can take in some of that information and provide those resources to you. We also like to say that we act as a bridge to bring and report to campus police. Now, undoubtedly, many folks, if you have ever been witness to or suffered from an issue of sexual misconduct or sexual violence, you undoubtedly know that there is some intimidation sometimes with reporting out to police. I don't know about you all, but I know where I grew up, truthfully, I didn't walk into police departments unless I kind of was taken there, all right? And what I will say is that given the notion that you have an available option to report with a limited amount of confidence, but to report nonetheless something that has happened to you or to someone else, I really want you to keep in mind that if you find yourself in a situation where you feel as if you want to report it, but maybe you are hesitant to reach out to our wonderful police officers, know that this is why I tell you about my job as a Title IX coordinator. It is important for you to know that. So there is, I promise, this is in no way egocentric. It is quite frankly for the benefit of everyone here. Like, I am here, if for no other reason, to simply monitor how we as a college on all 4 campuses really comply with what Title IX asks us to do, and it leads with providing a safe and secure environment, which we have so many people dedicated to doing. And you're a really, really big part of that as well. So there is my personal email address. There is a phone number attached to it. And down here at the bottom, without the hyperlink, unfortunately, you will see this, equity@ccri.edu. It is actually one of the emails I maintain as a confidential reporting email for me. That is an email that you can send that if you want to file a report, right? If you want to file a report, if you just want to reach out for services, if you want to know basically how maybe someone on campus can help you in this situation, please remember equity@ccri.edu. It's very important that you do. Here to support you, and at this point, I think I actually can move on to, Lauren, right? Who's gonna come up here and tell us a little bit about day one, which would be great.
Just before Lauren gets up here, I want to clear up something Alphonse reminded me that I didn't touch on, and that is a lot of people think, I would ask for a show of hands, but I'm not going to. If you report to the police that you've been sexually assaulted, it automatically initiates this huge investigatory machinery that you can't have any control over, right? And a lot of people think that. Any nodding of heads, anybody? So when you report you've been sexually assaulted to the police, it does not necessarily mean that we're going to conduct a full-blown criminal investigation. I just want everyone to be aware of that. It's okay for you to report to the police that you were assaulted. We would like you to, particularly if we can identify the attacker, if you know your attacker, to report and go through the criminal complaint. However, it's important for you to know that it doesn't mean that. You can report it, and it does not necessarily trigger this big, huge apparatus of investigative stuff that you have to deal with. So it's always important that you report it, and I think Day One can touch on that a little more if they'd like to. All right, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren and this is Deb.
Hi, I'm Deb Westgate Silva. We're from Day One, the Sexual Assault and Trauma Resource Center in Rhode Island, and we're going to tell you about some of our services.
We're both law enforcement advocates, so we work out of the Providence Police Department, even though we are employed through Day One. How many of you have heard of Day One before? Okay. Thanks. So basically our mission statement is pretty straightforward. Our goal is to reduce the prevalence of sexual abuse and sexual violence. And of course, advocacy is a huge role that we take. Day One has a huge offering of clinical services. They are trauma-informed and trauma-based clinicians, so they work specifically with the populations of sexual assault and domestic violence, which can be very helpful when you're going through something like that. And as you can see here, we also support children, adults, and there's like many different options for that we can talk a little bit more about. Day One also provides educational opportunities, so we do actually teach K through 12 classes, all prevention-based education. We do crisis intervention, and we also have college programs, so that's something that CCRI could also partake in, having a prevention education curriculum. We also provide, CSEC stands for the Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children. It's a human trafficking. We have a new department that's working on that. And also the CAC stands for Children's Advocacy Center. So when the victim is a child of sexual abuse or sexual assault, they have a very specific way that they are handled. So we use a forensic interview process with a multidisciplinary team. Only one person interviews the child and the rest of the team is in a separate room. And this is really important so that we don't re-victimize people who have, especially children, who have to keep telling their story.
That's a videotaped process with the goal that the child isn't going to have to testify in court.
So I want to focus a little bit more about our adult advocacy services. One of the main things that we provide is a Victims of Crime helpline, so please take down this number, and it's also over there at that table. If you ever go through any kind of sexual assault or domestic violence and you go to a hospital, you are absolutely entitled to an advocate who will come out and support you throughout the entire time that you're there. They can help you with the police if you want to file a report. If you don't want to file a report and you just want some support, that's fine too. And they can also help you through the process if you do want to get a kit done for your evidence collection and things like that.
And most of the hospitals and police departments as well are very well informed about the crime helpline, and so if somebody reports to the hospital having been a victim, they will say, do you want an advocate? So it's not always the victim that calls us, sometimes it's the hospital on the victim's behalf. The helpline is staffed 365 days a week, 24 hours a day.
And also, if you're interested in getting involved in being a volunteer advocate, that's something we can talk to you about too, because all of the advocates are volunteer, 7 hours a week. And like I said, we're law enforcement advocates, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. We also do police trainings and fire department trainings, as well as there's an opportunity for you to speak to the Office of Victim Services, which there's an advocate in the actual Department of Corrections who can give you information if you have an offender who's locked up and you want updates on their status and get notifications for that. So, for what we do, like I said, we're at the Providence Police Department. There is now an advocate in every single police department in Rhode Island. Our main goal is to provide advocacy and accompaniment throughout the legal process. So if you want to file a police report, but maybe you want to talk about it before you do it, we can help you with that. We can help you physically file the report. We'll go with you to file for a restraining order. If you have a hearing and you want court accompaniment, we do that too. We're basically there as a referral and resource guide.
One of the things Mr. Atkins mentioned, which I think is a really important point, is that a lot of people are intimidated about going to the police. And so our job is to take away some of that intimidation. And like he said, it doesn't always initiate a big full-blown criminal investigation. One of the things we can do is kind of explain to you what the process will be so you're making an informed decision whether you want to go forward or not.
Right, and we need you, if you want to, in order for the case to actually move forward, we need you to be willing and cooperative, that's what I was looking for. So if you aren't, then the case doesn't have to continue, so this is really up to you. And most of our clientele comes from police reports. That's kind of how we go through our day. But if you just have a question or you just need help filing for a restraining order, for example, that's something we can help you with as well. We provide referrals and resources, emergency housing, mental health services. We're going to probably refer you to Day One if you're in Providence, and that sounds like something you'd want to do. But we can also help you with outside services. We can do victims' compensation and all sorts of legal services, things like that. Two things I want to be very clear about is that we are not police officers and we're not clinicians. So like I said, we're the liaison between you and the police. If you want to speak to us privately before making a decision, that's totally fine. We can help you throughout that whole process. And as far as not being clinicians, we do provide moral support, but we're not trained clinicians, so that's something you would want to seek elsewhere as well.
So a lot of times when people come to us, even if they choose not to go forward in the criminal justice process, we can connect them with a lot of resources that will still help them to overcome what they have faced as a result of being a victim of a crime. So we really encourage people to reach out to us regardless of whether they want to move forward.
A couple of other things we do, we have One Voice at Day One, which is a group of survivors of sexual violence that go around and they share what happened to them and they encourage other people to do the same thing. Ultimate goal is to raise awareness of the prevalence of sexual violence and also to provide a platform for those victims to be heard. We do a lot of advocacy with public policy at Day One, and we also have trauma-informed yoga, which a lot of people really like, and the only requirement for that is that you should be seeing a clinician at the same time as you do the yoga. And like I said before, our mission is to reduce the prevalence of sexual violence, and ultimately we want it to be completely free of sexual violence and abuse. And we hope to shape what we provide to the needs of the community. So if, we need your opinion and your voice to constantly know how to address this issue effectively. Okay. So, for contact information, if you want to take any of this information down, Day One has a website. That's their main phone number. You can call at any time. The helpline number is a 24/7 thing. So if you want to call the helpline because you have a question, you're thinking about leaving your partner who is not treating you well, you just experienced a sexual assault, whatever it is, you can call and get information through the helpline. And then also, Deb and my contact information is right there at the bottom if you have any follow-up questions.
We've also put some brochures and business cards in the back if you want to grab them after the panel discussion.
That's it. Thank you.
So I guess we need to use the mic so that the video is, so that you all can hear us and so the video is picking up what's said. So I think what I'll do is maybe I'll just moderate if people want to raise their hand, and we'll call on people, and then we'll get the appropriate person up here to answer. So does anyone want to kick us off? Please.
Does Day One have a liaison to the CCRI police? You said all police departments, and I just didn't know if that was included all college police departments.
So currently, we're not at college campuses, but we're building our sexual assault response team program so that they'll be on all college campuses. However, usually college police is aware of our presence and can always access us if they need any information.
Hi, I see you back there.
Hi, this is a question for the captain. So last Wednesday night, I work here at CCRI, the Listing campus. I've worked here for about 18 and a half years. I went to the ladies' room. I was getting ready to leave that evening, and I went over here to the ladies' room right in this corner. And when I got inside the ladies' room, some kind of, the best way I could describe it is a lizard snake came from under the wall behind the stall. And I ended up running out of the ladies' room, and I ran to Sheila, the evening coordinator, because I was like so afraid. I ended up getting my stuff, and I ended up leaving. And the next morning, I talked to the staff about it, and I was explaining to him that, because he came to look at the hole, and I was explaining to him, I said, you see those 3 cameras? You could look at those cameras and you would see me screaming and running. And he had informed me that those cameras actually were not working. I was also informed that when you drive into the parking lot here to the back, because I usually park my car back there, that the first 4 parking spaces, the camera does actually not pick up that area. So you would actually have to park past those spaces, and now the camera will actually pick up that particular area. I was also informed that there are not cameras in the front area. So what campus police cannot do everything. This is our community, and all of us have to be vigilant. While you guys are meeting and coming together to look at some other protective measures, if you could just take a look at those things to make sure that the cameras are working and that cameras are in the appropriate places. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I'll address the last issue first about the cameras and the coverage. So I've designed and installed camera systems on campus, and I had the luxury of doing that from scratch. There will always be dead spots that you're not going to have on camera unless you have unlimited amounts of money and a camera that every 10 feet. So when you're installing and engineering and installing these systems, you try and pick up the best you can, knowing the campus and the traffic patterns and vulnerable areas, and given your camera budget, quite frankly, you build it within those confines. So I am going to take a look at this campus. The chief and I are going to look at what we have as far as improvements that can be made, and we will address those issues. I did not know we had snakes on campus. I didn't know I'd be addressing that issue. I don't know if that's, John, is that a construction issue? Is that the other construction area over there?
We have a couple critters, unidentifiable captains there. There's been a few mice also.
As far as the cameras that are not working, we routinely check. Recently, the chief received word here that lighting that was out, and they just spent an enormous amount of money on lighting here. And it shouldn't have gone out, but there's like with anything that's mechanical or electrical, there's glitches, right? So the maintenance people are on top of that, and cameras are the same thing. Why they're down, cameras do go down on occasion. I've had the entire system crash. So that's just like things in your house or your business. That's a maintenance issue, and we try and stay on top of them as best we can. So did I answer both parts of your question?
Captain, they
But I did like what you said, by the way, that campus police can't do everything, and we need to look out for one another. Thank you.
They are currently running.
They are currently momentary things. If it's for me,
Gentleman in the back.
Hi, I'm a deaf student at CCRI. I noticed that there should be more call boxes perhaps in the parking lot areas. The emergency call boxes they have on some campuses, you can push a button to contact screens. Should be more of those. Maybe there's not very many.
Let me hand that back to Captain Collins.
we are looking at the blue lights. Again, installing them is it's problematic. Again, if you had an infinite amount of money, that they're actually very expensive to install.
Yeah, I think it's not safe without.
Well, there are campuses that are removing their blue light phones because of the prevalence of cell phones throughout, especially on larger institutions. We will look again at the blue light campus. We're going to reevaluate security features from all aspects: blue lights, cameras, lighting.
There's not a signal on a cell phone, or you don't have a cell phone, so you can't rely on that either as an alternative. Because I'm looking more at the what if aspect of things. If a person does not have a cell phone, they don't have a signal on their cell phone. And there's no way to contact somebody for help in that instance.
Yeah. So, again, we have the escorts. I realize that's not a solution to every problem. The blue light phone installation, yeah, I'd like to see more as well, and we will take a look at that.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else out there?
So in light of the incident last week, when you said the front parking lot, is that, you're talking about the parking lot in front of where the security office is? Is that where the incident occurred?
Yes, if you were walking out the door, although I don't want people to get too hung up on where that incident took
Yeah, I
place.
was just
Right, because no one knows where, God forbid, another incident takes place, where it's going to happen.
Right.
But, so when you walk out the door here,
the main parking lot.
my understanding is the main parking lot to the right.
And can I just ask then, how did that person contact someone? Did they use a blue box? Did they look
I
for a
will,
security person?
no, it was not in immediate contact. So, we were not notified until the next day. which I think Day One would agree that it's not always, it's not unusual for a victim of sexual assault to delay reporting. I think there was one more.
Yeah.
Someone?
Leslie?
So what additional steps are we taking right now to kind of secure the campus? Is there an additional detail? Is Providence Police in detail? Are we having campus police patrol the lots where we know when it's like high volume times when classes get out, that kind of stuff?
All of the above. So when I was on my way in here today, the Providence Police Cruiser stopped and I talked to the detail officer. There's been Providence on the campus daily, and we've moved some of our officers from other campuses to this campus. So hopefully everyone's seeing more of a visible presence. Did I answer all parts of your question?
I just have one comment. I know I had this discussion in Warwick over the summer, but when new security measures of any kind are put in, sometimes I think people aren't always aware of the fact that they need to be multi-accessible for various handicaps. So I know we have some blue lights. I haven't luckily really looked at them, but I know on the campus a lot of times things aren't either in Braille or accessible to the deaf or somebody in a wheelchair in terms of height regulations. So when the new ones are put in, people can just think about that, because that is a huge issue for some of our students, where, even for our non-native speakers, and we have a lot of programs, even the non-credit programs, where students don't have access necessarily to English, and have other needs to reach people when they need help. And it's just, I think sometimes those things just get overlooked because it's not the mainstream.
I know with the blue lights that they are designed to be ADA compliant, so there's a certain distance you have to be able to reach up from a seated position. So, and I think it's been that way for quite some time, so I don't know how old our blue lights are, Chief. I don't know if there's any that are out of compliance. So I imagine that some places, there may be some that are old enough to be, because they've been around for a long time. But, I mean, they keep reinventing them and have cameras on them.
We test them monthly too, folks. So just so you know, all the ones we have are currently working, loud and clear.
Thank you. Two good questions about accessibility, from both availability of places to ask for help and for accessibility for everyone in our community. Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
I want to ask, what kind of type of sexual harassment could be considered? Like, by example, it could be writing sexual harassment, because if a student has lost his ID card and information card.
Give me just a little bit at the very beginning of your question again. What kind of what?
The different types of sexual harassment, if it could be physical and writing.
Well, sexual harassment itself, right, kind of distinguishes itself from what we just normally call harassment. But if you think of verbal harassment in particular, it certainly can be gender-based. So if it is gender-based sexual harassment, then that is something that falls within the purview of Title IX as far as seeking to protect folks from that.
And then you consider that as, let's say if a student lost his ID card and then somebody has used his personal ID, it could be something like that could happen?
I don't know if it would fall within harassment in particular, but it certainly would be likely an offense about student conduct. There's usually a false representation associated with student IDs, using a different student ID. But yeah, that would not necessarily qualify as harassment in particular. I mean, understand it's like the scope of Title IX is really, really broad, but it does find its root in gender-based harassment or discrimination offenses, typically. So we're talking about certainly certain forms of speech potentially, certainly threatening and intimidating behavior.
Like threatening,
Threatening people?
Tweeting, like tweeting.
Oh, tweeting.
Tweeting, yeah, sorry for my French.
Cyber stalking actually is, gender-based harassment, stalking, cyber stalking actually do get covered by the aspects of Title IX. Good question.
And I was just thinking, if there's something that doesn't fall under Title IX that you would think would fall under the student code of conduct, if you felt comfortable coming and giving me your contact information, I'd be happy to have someone get in touch with you about that. Go ahead.
This is actually for Chief Collins, is it?
Great.
Oh, Captain, sorry. Change the title on you. I'm a
No,
staff,
what?
I'm a staff person, here as well. I work on the Providence campus twice a week and across Lincoln and Warwick, the rest of the week. I know that we don't want to promote violence and we're not allowed to carry weapons. But my question is, worst case scenario, let's say I'm getting out of my car and an attacker comes, are we allowed to carry like the pepper spray in case, so we stop from getting it to that further, worse step?
D. All weapons are prohibited under the student conduct, and pepper spray is considered a weapon. Having said that, if you're attacked and you're engaged in self-defense, I certainly would use any and all means in my power to defend myself.
Well, I personally carry my best weapons, which are my high heels. But I was just asking because I know that the pepper spray is legally sold in the United States, so I don't know why they would consider that a weapon if we're carrying it, because I know they have them like for the keychains and stuff like that. I mean, because to stop from getting it, like I said, to that worst next step. I mean, I know I went to another event that the college police put on here for safety, like if somebody comes in with a gun, what do we do? And the last step was they said that if we have to fight back, you grab whatever it takes.
Yeah, use anything at your disposal. Absolutely.
So that was just my question. Thank you.
I think we had a question over here.
So I have 3 questions regarding to the last week incident. And the first one would be, was the perpetrator a CCRI student? Was the person arrested? And what if there's someone that doesn't even study in campus and is peeping on someone from outside of the parking lot?
The first 2, I can answer that we don't know if it was a student. There have been no arrests. We have no information about the assailant whatsoever. I didn't hear the last part.
Like, if there's someone that is peeping on somebody that is a student in campus, and that person is outside of the parking lot, and it's like, tries to enter to the parking lot to attack somebody, and that person doesn't even study here, like, how can we?
Well, the campuses generally are open campuses, so anyone can come onto the campus at any time. I mean, obviously, if somebody's there for some illegitimate purpose, we'd like to know about that. And that's when I'll get to the phrase, see something, say something, right? So if you see somebody waiting in the parking lot, it could just be somebody resting between classes. We don't care. If it bothers you that somebody's working there, sitting there for a long period of time, or if it just makes you feel uncomfortable, raises the hair on the back of your neck, whatever, if it's making you uncomfortable, there's a reason for that, right? We'll respond to it. If it turns out to be some innocent behavior, then don't worry about that. You know what I mean? It's not, we don't keep a list of times you called and it turned out to be nothing, right? We'd rather get the call, find out it's nothing, and move on from there. So probably in my 33rd year of doing law enforcement, either at a local campus or federal level, and if I could just get people to call the police when they think they should, that would be a victory.
Campus police officers, like yourself, you guys are trained in the police academy how to use firearms?
Everyone in the campus police department is a municipal academy graduate. The overwhelming majority are retired from local departments.
My question is, how come you guys don't carry firearms?
Certainly.
So that's been a topic of conversation in college campuses all across the country. And that is a conversation that President Hughes wants to have with the broader college community. Ultimately, it will be her decision about whether or not to do that, but that conversation hasn't really even yet begun. But it's something that she would want to engage the entire college community in, because it's something that affects all of us. Did that answer your question? A bit. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Kevin?
Kevin Salisbury from Athletics here at CCRI. When we recruit, coaches recruit, we get a lot of questions, obviously, from the parents on whether it's a safe campus. Because a lot of the students that we recruit are out of state. They come in, they live off campus and very close to campus. So I think one of the things that might be helpful is, I know under the Clery Act, they designate campus property. And a lot of the times they say, well, I look at your Clery report and there's only one here, one there, but I know right down the street, if you look at the Providence report, it's very different. So that might be a good clarification on what you guys actually have to report.
So there's what Clery requires, which you're right, it's a definite, Clery is all about geography, right? Title IX is about people, Clery is about geographic jurisdiction. So our Clery jurisdiction for each campus ends basically on the sidewalk across the street. But that does not mean, like I said earlier, we don't operate in a vacuum. That's why we have great relationships with Providence, Warwick, Lincoln, and Newport, right? And Westerly for our satellite down there. We try and keep as much as possible, and I think we do a fairly good job of it, Chief, right? Appraised of what's going on around the campuses, right? It'd be foolish not to. There's no invisible wall. I get that from parents. My last job was up in Boston, and there was no wall around the campus. So it's one of the most important things we do is intelligence gathering, what's going on, staying on top of trends, and I think John would, the lieutenant here is a retired Providence officer, so we have great working relationships. I'm retired from Warwick. We have people from all over the state, so we have those communications in place. So. Thanks for that question.
Anyone? Is there anyone else? I know a lot of people had to go to class. Intern.
I know you mentioned earlier that in 2017 we're looking at the Warwick campus for security cameras and some other pieces of that information. I think what would be really helpful, and this is just some unsolicited feedback, what would be really helpful is if the college community knew where you're planning to put those cameras. I know you said it was still in the stages and stuff like that, but most importantly on the campuses that do have cameras, I know Newport, when we built the campus, we built in cameras right away. It'd be helpful to know where those cameras are. I understand there might be some sort of thing in our heads like, we don't want to put where we put security cameras because then the crime won't happen there. It'll happen somewhere else where we don't have cameras. But it'd be helpful for the college community to know that, so that when we're contemplating reporting something, we know that we can also say, I know you have a security camera there. It'd be helpful if you looked at that. The other piece of this too is just privacy always comes up in conversation with security cameras, and I think it would be really helpful if we had a community discussion about that. I know we've had plenty of community discussions in the past, but not recently with all of the great staff and administration that are here now. And so it'd be really helpful to hear from the community about how they feel about security cameras, instead of just telling us you're doing it. I'm not personally against security cameras on campus. I'm against it if it's going to monitor things that don't need to be monitored, and we can put them other places like parking lots and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just important to talk about it as a community eventually.
Yep. So I think Captain Collins wants to say something too, and just to respond to that, Vice President Patton's here, so it's helpful to get feedback about as we're thinking about the design of the camera system and things like that in Warwick. And I guess I would just say maybe that's a good next step to think about, is having a broader conversation about our campus security. That's part of the reason we wanted to have this discussion. Sure. And that's certainly one aspect of it. And I do know, we have limitations about how our videotape footage can be used. That's part of our campus policy. So, and that's online, and I'm happy to talk with you more about it. But there are limitations of how it can be used.
Sure.
in order to protect the privacy of our employees and our staff and our students.
Absolutely.
So-
So more importantly, when it comes to camera systems, is all camera systems nowadays, when you're installing them, they'll be digital HD cameras. I'm waiting for the vice president to, yeah. So, because I haven't actually been a party to that. But so you can imagine the amount of server storage requirements, right? My last thing, I had a 30-day policy at my previous job where every 30 days we would write over the footage. So students were concerned about there would be a greatest hits of their foibles throughout the campus or something. That doesn't happen. And the stuff gets written over. Unless there's an investigation, you need to pull that section of time out and make a copy of it. But it's not going to sit on a server forever. My experience has been it doesn't even make it 30 days because you need a massive server to handle all that storage. And my previous place was writing over like in 21 days. So.
There was the only reason why I bring it up too is if you walk around, specifically the Warwick campus is where I'm located, there are stickers at every entrance that says there are security cameras on campus, and there aren't.
No, there are.
Well, they're
not abundant.
Those stickers were particular to a grant that I actually was a part of for saving, watching and monitoring some of the historical stuff we had in the Great Hall at the time and stuff like that. I know we have one security camera on the top of the building to the parking lot, which does not save on loop. That's my understanding. It's just live feed, which is great.
And the bookstore too.
And the bookstore. Okay. So that kind of stuff is important to know where they are. And again, I understand the fact that we don't want folks who are trying to think about ill intent to commit anything, and I'm not encouraging that they would, but it's just helpful for college us just to kind of have a little bit more assurance that if something happens to me in the parking lot, or something happens to me in the Great Hall, or something happens to me in the atrium, that I just know that I'm not making it up and there's some backup there in the back of my head. So it just kind of helps a little bit. So.
Yeah, and as far as, this is coming from me, not from the department or the administration, as far as the locations of the cameras, they're not invisible.
Absolutely.
You can see them where they are, so I have no qualms about
Sure.
identifying the locations.
Sure.
There will be, as far as wanting to get that episode on camera, like I said to the woman earlier, there will be blind spots. There will be, if it's a PTZ, which is a pan tilt zoom camera, when it's on patrol and moving, something could be happening over there, and it's 10 seconds into this direction. So you swing back, and that's gone. So nothing's perfect. So you try and get the coverage you can.
Sure.
I think we have 2 more questions, and I'm just noting it's 2 o'clock. But we can keep going. It's fine.
All right. So my question is, are the cameras monitored by campus police officers all the time?
No. There is nobody that's going to sit in front of, and this is a kind of an industry standard, there's nobody that's going to sit in front of a bank of cameras and be able to watch everything that's going on. You can't hire that person. That person would last about 2 days, because you just imagine yourself looking at CCTVs all day. You wouldn't focus. So what they're designed to do is you're designed to key in on movement. Some of them have movement monitors. It's very sophisticated sometimes, but they do get monitored. It's not a constant monitoring. There can't be an expectation that somebody's going to see something, because especially the more you add, the more screens there are. But there is an expectation that you will scan the community of cameras.
Go ahead. If it's another public safety question, we'll have Captain.
You have a great title, line guy.
Are there cameras in the parking lot where there still happened last week and in the back parking lot? In the rear parking lot?
There are cameras in the parking lots. However, again, like I said, there's always blind spots, and the cameras that move, don't necessarily pick up everything because they're patrolling. It's designed to do that.
I know that when I got out of class late at night, there's never a security guard back there together.
I've attended classes here, and I was pleased to see security in the parking lot. So it's kind of like I used to have people tell me when I was on patrol, we never see a patrolman in my neighborhood. And I said, I just went through that neighborhood like 5 minutes ago. So, our guys patrol regularly, and they log their patrols, so I can guarantee you the patrols are happening and they're out in the parking lot. So maybe attending to something inside the building that's happened. I mean, in any city or town you go to, forget about campus police. There's always times when the police are pulled away for something. So
And they can always call. You guys have the lanyards that you give out and the stuff you can put in the back of your phone, so you can always call the campus police as well if you don't see someone.
Do you want to repeat that just for the video?
Your point was that you can always call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there someone always in the building, I guess is another question.
There's always someone on the grounds, and on this particular campus, when they're not in the office, the calls are forwarded to a cell phone.
And if I could just expound about, we not only cover the parking lots in the patrol vehicle, we also walk them, all right? Because personally, I like to walk them. I just feel as though I can get to something more quickly, and I can see a lot more without any interference by walking, listening, seeing. So please be aware of that as well.
One more?
Yep.
I have a question. Last Wednesday, I was in the library and I was noticing the person in front of me had inappropriate pictures up, and I wasn't sure what to do about it. So what do I do if that happens again?
It comes up from time to time. People are looking at things they shouldn't be looking at in the library. It depends on what the pictures are. I hate to deflect the question, but we can talk about what inappropriate is.
We do have our dean of students here. Undoubtedly, likely an offense of our student conduct policy. The library typically has a policy about perusal of certain things. I don't know if it's an actual picture or a digital picture online. Yeah. It's possible, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but my guess is that it likely would still rest as an offense, potentially by student conduct policy. But there is, for a lot of schools, and I'd have to check, I also am new to the space, if we have a policy that is specific within our library spaces about someone's, let's say, consumption of what might be considered pornographic material.
And Dean Cunningham is shaking his head that we do.
Okay, thank you.
Great. If there aren't any more questions, we can wrap it up. I know a lot of people had to leave, but I really want to stress again that this is the first opportunity for questions and feedback. It's not the last. We had some really great questions and a lot of good things to follow up on that are coming out of it. And so I appreciate everyone for coming, and I hope we'll just keep the dialogue open as we think about security and safety in our campus. So thank you.
And if anyone is uncomfortable, if you will stick around a few minutes if you want to have a one-on-one conversation. Thank you to Day One for joining us.